I'm sweating. No, it's okay. I'm sweating so bad. Okay, I'm really nervous. I can't see anybody. And it's much easier being in a punk rock band because then I can just keep a roll of quarters in my fist and hit the guys in the front row. Um, my heart's racing. So tonight is actually a miracle that I'm here. I'm very grateful, Serge, for you asking me. Last year, I was getting married again. I know. To my wonderful husband, Steve Snake, who's here. And it was Mike Curry that brought him to buy a ring for me. He doesn't like chickpeas, but he ate them anyway. So I have been moved to laughter and tears tonight so many times. I feel very emotional about being here and about the festival in general. My parents were American, and they were studying in university. My father was from South Dakota, very, very nice. My grandfather was a minister. So, you know, good Methodist kids, my parents. My mother was from Minnesota. And for whatever reason, they decided to become missionaries, or as my dad would say, lay missionaries, which meant he wasn't in a better pay grade, he always joked. And they decided that they wanted to learn Hindi. They didn't even speak Spanish, French, just a little bit of English, but they wanted to learn Hindi and go to India. Now, don't be misled. Don't misunderstand me about my parents. They weren't there knocking on doors or anything. My dad was a dentist, of course. You know, I got my teeth knocked out on stage about 4 times, by the way. It's part of the job. Lucky me, dentist in the family. But he was teaching dental therapists in India, and specifically he was in a place called Bareilly. And they stayed in a compound that had a clinic, a dental clinic, and a seminary. And what they did was basically fix the teeth of all the kids at the mission schools and anyone from around the area that could get there. And so they had this serendipitous experience speaking Hindi. My father eventually also learned Urdu and Japanese and Korean and every other language he spoke. But they loved India. And my mom volunteered in an ashram where she met my sister. And Shireen was brought in as a young infant, and she was failing to thrive. So my mother talked my father into letting this baby stay in their home, and of course, pretty soon they started adoption proceedings to adopt my sister. Well, as my dad likes to tell the story, they were labeled as suckers from that point forward because they received a letter about a Canadian teenager who became pregnant. Of course, we're friendly in the prairies. Anyway, she became pregnant, and they were gonna have the baby put up for adoption. And so they asked my parents, and my dad joked about it and said, well, you know, if they can't find anyone else to take the baby, I guess we'll take the baby. And he laughed and said, you know, we didn't care what gender you were. We didn't care if you were a boy or a girl, which my mother says to this day, I don't care what gender you are. I'm like, thanks, Mom. I'm okay. Like, I'm here. I'm here. I'm good. And my father said he didn't care how ugly I was, which I still thanked him for. But the day came when they got word that this young mother had gone into labor. I'm gonna have water. You suggested it, and I said, no, I'm good. Oh, is this her glass? Is this your glass? They started the drive to New Delhi. I was born at a place called the Holy Family Hospital. Stop me if you've heard this. I think there's a Holy Family Hospital actually here in South Vancouver. I think so. I won't gargle. Sorry, I get the fire marshal bill thing because I'm dehydrated. My lips stick to my teeth if I'm nervous. Sweating. And I know that I don't want to use your baby powder, but you know, I had that thought when I saw it. I was like, just in case. Where was I? Oh, Holy Family Hospital. So because it was June, it was quite hot. My dad said it was about, honestly, 45 degrees. So they left early in the morning and drove from Bareilly to New Delhi and arrived at the hospital. And they walked in, my mom and my dad, and he said, hi, we're here for the baby. And the nurse said, we've been expecting you, and went and got the white baby and handed the white baby to the white people. And then they left. And that was it. And they thought it was very funny because he says, well, we could have been anybody, and you had no papers. So really, you could have been anybody, too. But I wasn't. I was their daughter, Beth, is what they named me. They had an opportunity to meet my birth mom and her mother, but they decided against it because they really didn't want that meeting to cloud or color how they saw me as I grew up. And they didn't want to compare me to anybody. They just wanted me to kind of develop into who I was, which I certainly did. So I joined my older sister, Shireen, and my parents, and we lived in Bareilly for a couple more years. And then they had to return to South Dakota, where they were going to start the adoption proceedings for me. Only the problem was they had no papers on me. Like a dog, I keep telling my parents, like a dog. And so they couldn't get me out of India, and they were actually going to sneak out through Nepal and claim me as a Canadian refugee. But they decided to do things by the book and write many letters to the Canadian High Commission for Canada to no avail at all, and they couldn't get any help, and it took quite a long time, but eventually got a temporary dog license or whatever it was for me. And we returned to the United States where they lived, and they officially adopted my sister and myself. And then, of course, my dad knocked up my mom. So then there were 3 little kids, and I was obviously the middle child. Now, my parents always wanted me to take great pride in my birthright, and they said that even though I was the only Canadian in my family, which is something I'm proud of to this day, I mean, now my sisters are Canadian, of course, but it was part of my identity. But so was my Indian birthright. And I thought, wait a minute, but I'm Indian, aren't I? And my older sister, of course, was the brown kid, and I was the white kid. And she said, no, you're not. And we often fought about it. But the truth is, the way it worked was when I was 21, I could choose my citizenship. Now, I thought that was remarkable. I don't know what you were doing when you were 21, but I was on tour with Chai Pig. And in my band, Gorilla Gorilla, and I certainly wasn't all that concerned about my citizenship because I was a very patriotic Canadian already. So I didn't do anything about it and remained a faithful, polite, apologetic Canadian, unless I'm performing in a band. And then I'm a little bit louder version of that person. But ultimately, I am my mother's daughter. And having had the opportunity to meet my birth mom when I was 22, and my parents flew me to meet her in Ontario for my birthday present, it was the most amazing thing that I had ever experienced. I don't look anything like anyone in my family at all, but I looked exactly like this lady with these big, buggy green eyes and this amazing jawline that disappeared into these big fish lips. And she was smoking Benson & Hedges Deluxe Ultralight 100s like I did back then, which I thought was very auspicious. Of course, I don't smoke anymore, but at the time it was a huge point of clarity for me when I realized that I would be able to tell you without a shadow of a doubt the differences between my environmental upbringing and my genetics. And for sure, my birth mom got married a few times herself. And I thought that was really cool because I went, wow, you're an optimist just like me. That's cool. And I got to eat with her in her home, and she prepared Hindustani food for me. And we sat on the floor and smoked our Benson & Hedges Deluxe Ultralight 100s with our chai tea out of little glasses. And I really felt like I had come full circle in my life. And it was a really beautiful moment for me to kind of think that I got some of these neat things from her. But my cooking really is from my mother. And we did have our family suppers every Sunday. And she made, of course, butter chicken, which I still don't understand. I'm not a fan, obviously, as a vegan, but even, the whole concept of it. I like spicy food. I met a man who likes very spicy food, so I kept him, and I kept cooking for him. And he stayed, which is amazing. And I'll make you a vindaloo for our anniversary coming up, I will. But it was my connection, and I felt like I had no heritage as an adopted kid, even though I loved my parents and they loved me, and I was proud of the people that they were and that I was raised by these people. They were civil rights activists in America. My father was there in Selma, Alabama. He went with his minister and 8 other guys from his church, and I was like, tell me the story again and again and again. And we watched the movie Gandhi every Christmas, and they tried very hard to keep that cultural connection alive for us. Of course, all they listened to was Ravi Shankar, along with Nat King Cole. Of course they did. And they tried to teach us how to make burfi, and I was terrible, and my sister was great. And the only word I really retained in Hindi, of course, was chup, or bus. My first words I learned. And I tried to kind of weave that upbringing into some of my songs. And sometimes it was enjoyable and sometimes it was painful. And I love writing very sad songs. I love writing very mad songs. I love it. And it was an expression, but so is cooking. And so is everything that we do. And part of my connection to my birthright, I guess, is the feeling that I get when I talk about my parents or how they raised us or being in this room today. I was absolutely transposed while I was here tonight. I have cried 3 times so far tonight, since I've been here. I have laughed out loud. I think I laughed so hard, I think I farted. I mean, just like, that abandon you feel when you're at home with your family. And it's been a really emotional experience for me. And I've wanted to be here so many different years, and finally it all came together. And I think that I know it's the end of the week, and the festival has been going 6, 7 years. I think it's amazing what you put together in curating. I get misty just thinking about it, because stuff like this is really, it's moving. It really is moving, and it does connect us. And, you know, I'm addicted to that connection with people. I love people. And I love it. I love everyone in the room tonight. I love being here. And the fact that I got to meet some of my heroes, I mean, over the course of the last couple of days, has been bucket list pinch me. Hopefully we will all win the Samosa Prize tonight for being here. And I hope everyone has had a beautiful time listening to all of these really incredible human beings speak and perform and transform us. We're right now in a very safe bubble in this place, in this moment in time, and I'm gonna hold on to it. From here to Bareilles and back, you're all gonna stay in my heart. So thank you. Thank you.